The villain of the welterweight division, Kamaru Usman, has finally fallen. Now it might be odd to call Kamaru the villain of the division, especially when characters such as Colby Covington, Jorge Masvidal and Khamzat Chimaev reside within. However, I don't think this sentiment lies too far from the truth. Kamaru was the villain, and that is a title that he would not hold if he did not first hold the belt. Kamaru isn't the heel, he doesn't prance around extravagantly, and he doesn't make himself out to be the bad guy. Yet, despite the innocent character he plays, he was probably, up until his downfall in the fight with Leon Edwards, the biggest villain within the UFC. This status of villain comes from one main reason, which is amplified by several others, that reason being his unwillingness to lose, no matter what it takes. Now, normally, an attitude that pushes through every situation, unwilling to give up and lose, is a noble, compelling and endearing characteristic. However, despite this, I have never rooted for Kamaru to win in any of his fights. The first fight of his that I watched live, that being his first fight with Jorge Masvidal, Kamaru put on one of the most boring and aggravating performances I have seen to date. It has been difficult to root for him since then. Kamaru, unlike some fighters, such as Yuri Prochaska, does not manifest his desire to win at all costs with a viscous tenacity that pulls him through to the end, defying all odds. No, for Kamaru, his desire to win comes by way of the safest, most boring route. Kamaru stonewalls, that is, he does not fight, but rather simply prevents his opponent from doing so. MMA is not a points sport. Yes, you can win simply by having more points than your opponent at the end, but that is not the goal. The goal of MMA is to beat your opponent beyond any shadow of a doubt. You either make them submit or make it so they couldn't even if they wanted, i.e. you knock them out. A fight is meant to have a definitive winner. That is the mindset fighters come with, and that is what the viewers expect. If two fighters can stand at the end of a fight, raising their own arms and each declaring themselves as the winner until the judges get involved, then nothing was decided. Regardless of how dominant one may have been over the other, there is no actual winner in those scenarios, regardless of what the authorities might say. MMA is supposed to be a fight to the death. Minus the death part, of course. Only the winner should be able to declare their victory. The loser should never be able to come away from a fight and say that they should have won, or that the judges got it wrong. This is another reason Kamaru's first fight with Masvidal was terrible. Points are not part of the equation because two fighters should not be standing by the time the fight is over. The only reason points are included in the first place is for the scenarios in which the two fighters could not decide within the time limit they were given who is the dominant one. This makes points a necessary evil, only present due to the existence of a fight time limit. If there were no time limit, the fight would either end with a definitive winner via submission or knockout, or it would simply be a draw. No other options would be on the table. It is for this reason that point fighters are not actually fighting. They are actively avoiding the main goal of the sport, and instead choosing to ride out the time, stonewalling their opponents while securing more points with the judges. This is not fighting. You can be as technically competent as you want, but unless you are going for the knockout, you are not fighting, you are avoiding it. Points are not the goal, they are a necessary evil. This is where Kamaru's villainous actions come into play. He is more than willing to shove his opponent up against the side of the octagon, hold them there, and pile up points with the judges while preventing his opponent from doing anything but struggle to get free. He doesn't come to fight. Unless, of course, you count toe stomping and thigh kneeing to be fighting. Kamaru's goal is to win via points. He chooses the, while yes, sometimes necessary, evil path. Now, don't get me wrong, Kamaru can bring a fight if he is willing. While his first fight with Jorge was disgustingly boring, he seemed to have taken the criticism to heart and redeemed himself with their second fight, providing one of the most beautiful knockouts I have ever seen. His fight with Burns wasn't bad either. What makes him a villain isn't his ability to fight, but his willingness to avoid it whenever he deems necessary. And this is especially egregious because of the position he held. Kamaru was the champion, the belt holder, the man at the top who everyone had their eyes on. He was the one who defined what the biggest fights would be in his division and the one everyone wanted to challenge, but he did not fight. He sat atop as the greatest fighter, yet often would not engage in the fight. His only concern was maintaining his status without actually proving it to be true. This is not how fighting is supposed to be. If your opponent is stronger and scarier than you, you must fight it out. Let the better fighter win. That is why you are in the cage together. Stonewalling is missing the point. The champion shouldn't just be a survivor, he should be a fighter. And this is even more true for the champion. While point fighting is villainous when engaged in by any fighter, it is far worse when a belt holder, and a long-time champion at that, who had more than enough skill to compete as the fighter at the top of the division, chooses to do it. To put it another way, as the champion, Kamaru was essentially the king of the welterweight division. We, the viewers, are the citizens. The king's role is to serve the people, which in this case is done by providing an entertaining fight. That's why Kamaru was king, because he was the best fighter. So when he chooses to retain his title of champion, of king, above all else, refusing to fight, the very thing he is labeled as king of, the thing he was put there to serve the people with, he is not carrying out his responsibilities. When your people cheer for someone else to overthrow you, you have not been a good king, you have been a villainous one. Now, this villainous status isn't all bad, heels are often beloved for a reason. While I certainly wouldn't say Kamaru is beloved for his fighting tendencies, the build-up to his fights were always exciting. It was very easy to root for any of his opponents, the anticipation of who might take him down turned any of Kamaru's opponents into a potential hero. Would it be Masvidal or Colby or Burns? Finally a challenger succeeded in defeating the villain, and the hero turned out to be Edwards. Kamaru, the point-fighting villain has fallen, and today, a true fighter, the hero of the division, sits at the top. Now, will Adesanya be the next villain to be overthrown?